In our last adventure, Vikir made a bold declaration: the sword would never fall into the hands of the demon clans because it belonged to him now. As he grasped the hilt, an unexpected surge of energy coursed through his hand, leaving him astonished. The sword vanished from sight, only to reappear moments later, seamlessly fused with Vikir's hand. With a simple extension of his arm, the sword Beelzebub materialized, radiating a subtle aura. Vikir marveled at the blade, knowing it was forged from the remains of a devil's holy constellation. He felt fortunate to possess such a powerful weapon. Grinning, he couldn't help but wonder just how much stronger he would become with Beelzebub at his side, filling him with eager anticipation. After thoroughly exploring the dungeon and finding nothing else of value, Vikir decided to head back. However, as he was leaving, an odd sensation swept over him. Dizzy and ravenous, he dropped to his knees. To his surprise, it wasn't his own hunger, it was the sword's. Beelzebub's voice echoed in his mind, revealing its insatiable appetite. Vikir staggered out of the dungeon, clutching his stomach in pain, pondering if his heightened senses were a side effect of the sword's hunger. Suddenly, Beelzebub pulled Vikir in a specific direction, tugging at his hand with urgency. Driven by curiosity, Vikir sprinted where the sword led him, arriving at the corpse of the hellhound he had slain earlier. Astonished, Vikir extended the sword towards the lifeless creature, watching as Beelzebub absorbed its blood. The sword's voracious hunger was satisfied, and Vikir's own pangs of hunger subsided. Vikir couldn't shake the thought that Beelzebub's hunger might have caused the nearby mountains, trees, and soil to wither. Glancing down at the sword, he felt a sense of responsibility and frustration towards its unpredictable nature. Beelzebub finished its meal with a contented hum, prompting Vikir to study its abilities further. He discovered that Beelzebub's inherent power, glutton of flies, allowed it to absorb the skills of its opponents, making it a formidable weapon. However, this power was nearly limitless, and countless people had lost their abilities after facing Beelzebub. Vikir knew he could only steal up to 3 abilities for the sword, aware of its hazardous nature. Examining the first slot on Beelzebub, Vikir saw it was equipped with the Hemorrhage Hellhound skill, rated B+. This skill enabled the sword to continuously drain the blood of its opponent, even through the smallest wounds. An idea struck Vikir, and he approached the dead Cerberus's body, letting Beelzebub get to work. However, Vikir intervened, knowing he couldn't explain excessive damage during the autopsy. Lightly tapping Beelzebub, he commanded, "Enough." Beelzebub let out a pained cry, like a child being scolded. With Beelzebub's slots now full, it had absorbed 3 powerful abilities: Burn Injury Cerberus A+ rank, Hemorrhage Hellhound B+ rank, and High-Speed Regeneration Norvegicus Surat F rank. Vikir was surprised to see the high-speed regeneration ability and noticed a dead rat beneath the Cerberus. Realizing that Beelzebub had consumed the Surat crushed under the Cerberus, Vikir marveled at the sword's power. Vikir considered acquiring the Burn Injury skill from the Cerberus a significant achievement. The excruciating pain of Thermalgia far surpassed the Hellhound's hemorrhage, making this new skill a formidable addition to his arsenal. With the monster now prepared for submission for the practical exam, Vikir suggested waiting until it was over. Meanwhile, the young hounds had completed their practical examinations and returned to Baskerville, eagerly awaiting their evaluations. As the results were announced, the young hounds received shields, swords, or necklaces as rewards, crafted from the monsters they had hunted. However, one young hound left a lasting impression on everyone present. In his office, Hugo, the patriarch of the Baskerville family, sat in astonishment. "Who caught what?" he asked his head butler. The butler reported that Master Vikir Van Baskerville, an 8-year-old hound, had hunted a Cerberus, an A-ranking monster, which had accidentally crossed into the restricted area during the practical exam. Hugo was astounded. Even the family's guardian knights avoided such high-ranking beasts. The head butler elaborated that the Cerberus had been wounded by a barbarian tribe and that Master Vikir had used a poisoned wooden spear to hunt it. However, the specifics of the poison and its source remained unknown. Hugo, intrigued, noted that the butler could only relay what was written in the hunting journal. He had intended to question Vikir about it, but the young hound had returned to his dorm, claiming exhaustion. Hugo found this amusing, remarking on Vikir's slyness. He mused that information equated to power, and power was invaluable. The head butler expressed his surprise that a hound named Van, rather than the more prestigious Lerola, exhibited such exceptional talent. Hugo, the patriarch of the Baskerville family, responded firmly, "I do not discriminate based on a hound's bloodline. I raise hounds based on their talent and drive, not their lineage." Even mutts can come from royal bloodlines. The head butler, contemplating Hugo's second son, who was preparing for isolation training, kept his thoughts to himself and simply apologized. Hugo dismissed the apology but mentioned he needed a mood booster. The head butler suggested summoning Master Vikir. Standing before Patriarch Hugo, Vikir exuded composure and confidence. Hugo inquired about his success in catching the Cerberus during the practical exam. Vikir, unfazed, explained that he had used chocolate on his wooden spear, knowing it was a lethal poison for canid monsters. This revelation astonished Hugo, who then recalled Vikir's earlier request for chocolate before the hunt. The head butler present in the room was taken aback by the lack of a proper greeting between Vikir and Hugo, wondering if this was truly a conversation between a father and son. Nevertheless, the conversation continued, with Hugo questioning Vikir about his lack of response when the butler had inquired about the hunt. Vikir calmly explained that the butler was not his master. When Hugo asked who his master was, Vikir simply stated that as a member of the clan, the master of the clan was his master as well. Hugo smirked, congratulating Vikir on his successful hunt and telling him that, as a reward, the monster's corpse would be his to claim. As the highest scorer, Vikir was granted the privilege of making a wish. Vikir's eyes lit up with the opportunity, and with determination, he requested access to the 10,000 epistle library. This vast library, one of the largest in the empire, was located deep within the heart of the Baskerville clan. Hugo raised an eyebrow at the request, reminding Vikir that only the patriarch, second in command, and their direct descendants were permitted entry. Undeterred, Vikir stated that he would give up if it wasn't allowed, but secretly, he was already planning to sneak in. To his surprise, Hugo granted him permission. Vikir was shocked, but Hugo's generosity didn't end there. Hugo instructed him to read the Baskerville 6th technique, located in the 6th restricted zone deep inside the library. Vikir was astonished that Hugo would allow a child with the Van middle name to read the 6th technique, as it was unheard of for an illegitimate child to access beyond the 4th technique. Trying to stay calm, Vikir rationalized the situation, though he knew Hugo was currently at the 7th technique and had, before his regression, been able to bear 9 fangs. Vikir hadn't forgotten the discrimination he faced as an illegitimate child and was determined to surpass Hugo's level. His ultimate goal was to obtain the greatest essence of Baskerville, the textbook of swordsmanship containing the teachings of the first patriarch who had subjugated the 7 great disasters. Vikir believed this book was the key to his success, and he was confident that Hugo would eventually hand it over to him. As Hugo smiled faintly and wished Vikir good luck, Vikir bowed and thanked him. He knew Hugo had no idea of the true value of the random book he was granting access to, but that didn't matter to Vikir. He was determined to make the most of this opportunity and grow stronger, exceeding everyone's expectations. Vikir arrived at the 10,000 epistle library for the first time, gazing around in amazement. As he browsed the shelves, he read the titles aloud to himself: Severing Incisors, Grinding Molars, Piercing Canines, Snaggletooth that Embeds Twice, Wisdom Teeth that Lay Down, and many other books on swordsmanship. These were the techniques he had desperately wanted to learn in his past life. However, Vikir knew that no matter how much mana an illegitimate child of Baskerville possessed, they could not learn any technique superior to the 4th. This restriction was a defense mechanism to ensure that the hounds never bared their teeth towards their master. Vikir eventually arrived at a book locked with chains and a lock in the middle. He wondered if this was the book on the 6th technique. He couldn't believe that Hugo had offered him access to it. In his past life, Vikir would never have dreamed of this opportunity. As he unlocked the book, he thought to himself that Hugo probably allowed this because he believed an 8-year-old child wouldn't be able to memorize the contents in a single day. But Vikir, before his regression, had already learned the theory behind the first to fourth techniques to the point of exhaustion. He had done this to deduce and speculate the theory of the fifth technique. Vikir realized that after drawing the fourth tooth, he needed to have stopped the flow of mana. Perhaps that was why he couldn't manifest the fifth tooth. Baskerville's swordsmanship had a unique trait where the number of teeth corresponded to the stage of the sword, 1 tooth for the first technique, 2 teeth for the second, and so on. When you draw teeth, a special red sword energy appears. Despite gaining access to the book on the sixth technique, Vikir had a different goal in mind. He had come to the 10,000 epistle library to find something beyond his current stage. As Vikir walked out of the swordsmanship section, the guards were caught off guard. They questioned him in disbelief, wondering if he was done reading already. Offering to fetch more swordsmanship books from deep within the library, the guards were amazed when Vikir declined, assuring them he had finished what he came for. They suggested he stay longer to browse other books, and Vikir agreed, planning to read more before leaving. As Vikir moved to another section, the guards whispered among themselves, commenting on the supposed worthlessness of the miscellaneous section Vikir was heading to. One guard even wondered aloud if Vikir, due to his youth, didn't know the value of the deep swordsmanship textbooks. Overhearing their conversation, Vikir thought to himself that he would leave them to their assumptions. He knew that hidden among the dusty miscellaneous books lay a true treasure. Suddenly, Vikir's eyes lit up as he spotted a book titled A Lurking Ambush. He reached for it, holding it in his hands and knowing it was the book he had been searching for. Examining it, he noted its seemingly useless appearance with ripped pages, but he was well aware of its true worth. Vikir recalled a time before his regression when he was affiliated with the Hound Squad. They had found a single ripped page from a swordsmanship textbook, inscribed with Baskerville's handwriting. Hugo, obsessed with finding the book that matched the page, had scoured the entire library and finally discovered it in a lurking ambush. This book contained writings from Baskerville ancestors, including the 10th technique that Hugo had desperately sought. Hugo sent hounds to the 7 great families to obtain the remaining 6 pages, even declaring war on those who refused. After the sacrifice of many hounds, all the missing pages were secured. But in the end, the only reward for their sacrifice was a simple good job. Hugo had broken through the 7th technique and achieved the 9th technique, but at a terrible cost. Beneath him lay a pile of wasted hound corpses and blood. Vikir's eyes narrowed with anger as he recalled this memory. He muttered that it was a stupid life and resolved not to let it happen again. Vikir remembered the contents of those missing pages and realized that the only reason he couldn't progress beyond the 4th technique was his lack of access to the original book. Those missing pages held the key to mastering the techniques. Without them, the book was nothing but a collection of random and useless techniques. As Vikir read the book for a while, he remarked aloud that if others read this book, it would seem like a miscellaneous collection that didn't make any sense. But the moment you use the missing pages to fill in the blanks, the false and misleading information transforms into an amazing masterpiece. Vikir had reached the highest level of graduator aura and the highest level of the 4th technique before he regressed. He knew he could do it again, but this time, he wouldn't make the same mistakes. Vowing to himself, he set a goal to reclaim his lost power before turning 15. Deeply engrossed in reading A Lurking Ambush, Vikir lost track of time. When he finally closed the book, night had turned into day. He felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, having memorized the entire book's contents. As Vikir stood up, he noticed the guardian knights were nowhere to be seen. Though he knew he couldn't draw 10 teeth with his young body, he was confident he now had the potential to achieve the 5th technique, something he couldn't reach in his previous life. Entering a focused and determined state, Vikir faced the statue before him and began striking it with his Baskerville sword techniques. He executed the 1st technique, followed by the 2nd, then the 3rd, and finally, the 4th technique. Memories of his past flooded his mind as he fought. He remembered how hard he had worked to obtain the highest level of graduator aura but couldn't learn a suitable sword technique due to the hostility from the direct bloodline. Being an illegitimate child had prevented him from progressing beyond the 5th technique, but this time, Vikir was determined not to let his past hold him back. He channeled his anger and frustration into his sword strikes, envisioning Hugo's face on the statue before him. With a defiant spirit, he unleashed his technique, cutting through the statue with precision. Breathing heavily, Vikir wondered if he had successfully executed the fifth technique. Clenching his hands, he smiled as he felt a hot sensation rising from his heart to his neck. Overwhelmed with happiness, Vikir felt tears welling up in his eyes as he realized he needed a sword to test his newly learned technique. In a record-breaking moment in Baskerville's history, a young hound's canine teeth began to grow, bared towards its master. Vikir beamed with pride, his body still trembling with excitement from successfully drawing the fifth tooth. He marveled at how far he had come and how quickly he had managed to do it. The strength of his man now supported him at a level he had only achieved after years of hard work in his previous life. As he looked at the liquid aura flowing within him, a sign of his newfound status as a graduator, he felt a profound sense of awe. Graduators were on a completely different level from sword experts, and he was now one of them. It had taken him 30 years to reach this level in his previous life, and yet here he was, only 8 years old. The solid ore within him had transformed into a liquid state with increased density, allowing him to use it more freely. Vikir felt confident in his new skills and abilities and was determined to master the lurking ambush sword technique to its full potential. He realized that with this technique, he could seamlessly transition between offense and defense, making it perfect and limitless. Vikir carefully placed the book near the window and took a moment to reflect on his progress. He had come a long way since his regression, now stronger and more skilled than ever before. He felt he could challenge a mid-class graduator and win using his new skills. However, he also knew he couldn't reveal too much of his strength to Hugo. He needed to give Hugo something to look forward to, buying himself time to take what he needed. With a determined look, Vikir took out a magnifying lens and placed it carefully near the book. The sun's rays converged onto the pages through the lens, and a small fire started burning them. With an evil grin, Vikir commented that the destruction of the book would make it difficult for Hugo and the hounds to reach the 10th technique, although he himself would face no such difficulty. Suddenly, the guards, who had been absent, arrived in the library, drawn by the smell of burning paper. They were startled to see Vikir and demanded to know what had happened. Vikir quickly changed his expression to one of apology and explained that he had accidentally left the magnifying glass around, which caused the fire. He offered to inform the butlers of the incident. The guards, fearing punishment, hesitated, but one eventually said it was not something Vikir needed to apologize for. It was their fault for not looking after him properly, and they were relieved it was an area with only useless books. Vikir, having narrowly escaped the incident with the book, approached the guards with a calm demeanor. He asked if they were busy dealing with the Mord clan regarding the ruby mines, suggesting that they might not have time to handle minor issues like this, especially given their absence. The guards, relieved to avoid further complications, agreed to keep the incident a secret, provided Vikir did the same. As he began to leave, Vikir graciously suggested they keep the matter between themselves and apologized for taking up their time. As Vikir walked away, the guards spoke among themselves, impressed by his considerate nature towards the workers. They believed he deserved respect. Little did they know, Vikir left with a mischievous grin, having cleverly deflected any potential trouble. In Hugo's office, the patriarch questioned Vikir about his time in the library. Vikir responded cryptically, saying he had learned something that was warm and sharp, yet soft and viscous. This response left both Hugo and the head butler stunned. They realized that Vikir might have achieved the aura's significant milestone in the swordsmanship world. Typically, even the most prodigious talents had to train tirelessly until the age of 15 to reach the level of a low-class sword expert. Hugo, although excited, was skeptical due to Vikir's young age. He decided to test Vikir's newfound skills. In the Colosseum-like structure, Vikir stood ready with a sword while many young hounds watched with mixed expressions of curiosity and concern. The head butler asked Hugo how he intended to test Vikir's abilities. Hugo revealed his plan to release a monster for Vikir to confront. The head butler was taken aback but soon learned that Hugo had prepared a particularly formidable opponent, a hungry and feisty one. The gate before Vikir creaked open, and a guard dragged in a chained orc. This massive, green-skinned creature was covered in bulging muscles and had razor-sharp tusks protruding from its mouth. Its beady eyes scanned the Colosseum, evaluating the situation with a menacing glare. The young hounds in the audience gasped and whispered in disbelief, shocked at the sight of such a fearsome creature being pitted against an 8-year-old. Some questioned whether the Guardian Knights would need to intervene if things escalated. The Colosseum was filled with a mix of anticipation and disbelief as Vikir prepared to face the orc. Hugo's signal echoed through the arena, and the guard, trembling slightly, unlocked the chains binding the monstrous creature. With a thunderous roar, the orc lunged at Vikir, its massive form moving with surprising speed. Vikir, unshaken, stood his ground. As the orc closed in, Vikir's sword cut through the air with an agility that stunned everyone. In one swift motion, he severed the orc's arm. The audience gasped, their eyes wide with shock at the display of such raw power from an 8-year-old. Without missing a beat, Vikir followed up with another precise strike, amputating the orc's leg. The creature crashed to the ground, growling in agony. Remaining composed, Vikir assessed the situation. He noted the orc's shock at the sensation of bleeding, an experience it was evidently unfamiliar with, given its usual high-speed regeneration. Vikir's awareness of the B-class hellhound's hemorrhage skills proved crucial. He understood that the orc's regenerative abilities wouldn't activate against this kind of wound. The audience's murmurs grew louder, their disbelief palpable. They couldn't fathom how such feats could be achieved by someone so young, especially without extensive mana collection. Hugo's face was a mask of calm, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of intrigue. Vikir, fully aware of the patriarch's scrutiny, decided to up the ante. Without warning, Vikir's sword began to radiate a brilliant red light. Hugo's eyes widened, recognizing the aura blade, a hallmark of a low-class sword expert. Vikir seized the moment, charging towards the wounded orc. With a decisive swing, the aura blade cleaved through the air, decapitating the orc with clinical precision. The head flew off, and the Colosseum erupted in astonished applause. The head butler, awestruck, immediately identified the glow as the aura of a low-class sword expert. He congratulated Hugo, marveling at the emergence of a new genius who promised to be unrivaled across the Empire's families. However, Hugo, still scrutinizing the scene, noted the continuing flow of the orc's blood and questioned the orc's strength, suggesting that Vikir's victory might be attributed to the orc's weakness. Vikir's voice cut through the commotion, breaking the tense silence. With a bright, innocent smile, he asked, "Is there anything stronger than this orc?" The audience of young hounds looked on in amazement at Vikir's bold request. Vikir's motives were clear. He sought to impress his father, Hugo, and the gathered audience. By taking on a stronger adversary, he hoped to secure his place, demonstrating his prowess and potentially earning his father's recognition, which could lead to a separation from Hugo's shadow, whether through deployment to a remote area or entry into a prestigious academy. As Hugo observed the intense fight between Vikir and the troll, he acknowledged his son's craving for a formidable challenge. With a nod to his head butler, Hugo directed that a recently captured creature from a barbarian raid be brought in, a massive troll, imposing and fierce. The audience, previously stunned by Vikir's performance against the orc, now gasped at the sight of the new opponent. The troll, towering over Vikir with its grotesque form and bulging muscles, was released from its chains. It roared and charged at Vikir with a mighty swing of its massive fist. Vikir, undeterred, dodged the attack with agility that belied his young age. He swiftly maneuvered behind the troll, taking advantage of its momentary disorientation. From the stands, a spectator questioned Vikir's hesitation to attack, unsure why he didn't seize the opportunity. Hugo, ever the strategist, explained that trolls possessed remarkable regenerative abilities. Only a truly fatal strike would subdue such a creature. The audience watched in rapt attention, trying to decipher Vikir's strategy. Despite the initial confusion, Vikir used the troll's strength against it. He aimed a precise attack at the troll's arm, nearly severing it from the shoulder. The audience gasped, believing this might be the end for the troll. However, their astonishment turned to disbelief as the troll's wounds began to heal rapidly. It was evident that Vikir's previous attack wasn't enough to defeat the creature. Vikir contemplated his next move. The troll's regeneration meant that only a technique as powerful as Beelzebub's hemorrhage skill could ensure a fatal blow. Despite his awareness, Vikir hesitated, calculating the potential consequences of using such a technique. He wanted to create a dramatic narrative, one where he appeared to be on the brink of a breakthrough. Hugo, noticing the escalating tension, advised Vikir to halt before the situation became uncontrollable. However, Vikir, with an innocent yet determined expression, dismissed the concern. He claimed he was on the verge of an epiphany and would concede if he couldn't end the fight with his next strike. The troll, sensing Vikir's resolve, roared menacingly. Vikir, in a state of deep concentration, prepared for his final move. He was determined to show not just his capability but also how he could grow through the fight, all while gauging Hugo's reaction. As Vikir readied himself, he mentally rehearsed the scenario. He had crafted a demonstration of how he could evolve and gain new insights during the battle. His aim was to impress Hugo and the audience with his skill and strategic thinking, all while keeping his true power and potential under wraps. With his sword glowing red, Vikir prepared for a powerful attack. His sword struck the troll's head cleanly, slicing it off without resistance. The audience, including the head butler, was shocked by what they had just witnessed. It was unprecedented for an 8-year-old to achieve the second technique of the Baskerville clan, typically attained at 18. Vikir was overjoyed, wearing an innocent smile as he declared his victory. Hugo, however, was left in shock, unable to believe what he had seen. A week after Vikir's impressive display, he sat in the Baskerville clan's dining area, staring at a bowl of unappetizing meat porridge. He noticed that everyone was avoiding him, which didn't surprise him since power was paramount in their family. He was pleased to see that even Hugo was taken aback by his recent display of power. Vikir reflected on what he had revealed about himself, his Baskerville second technique, and mid-rank sword expertise. However, he knew the truth: he was actually a low-rank graduator who could weakly perform the Baskerville fifth technique. With the skill obtained from the troll, he believed he was now stronger than the average graduator. He remembered eating more since acquiring Beelzebub's third slot, which now had super speed regeneration. Suddenly, the triplets appeared behind Vikir, causing him to be surprised and cautious. He didn't want to deal with them again, so he turned back to his food and resumed eating. The triplets quickly explained that they just wanted to tell him how cool he was when he defeated Cerberus and the troll. Vikir, surprised, fed out his porridge. The triplets asked if he was okay, but Vikir was suspicious of their motives. He thought it might be some kind of deceitful tactic and considered confronting them. However, before he could act, the head butler, Barrymore, appeared and called out his name. Vikir was surprised to see Barrymore and wondered why he was there. Barrymore informed him that he should hurry to the Patriarch's room. Vikir wondered why Hugo had summoned him. In the Baskerville clan's Patriarch office, Hugo sat in his chair as someone entered and greeted him. It was Adolphe Morgue, representing the Morgue clan. Hugo acknowledged that it had been a while, and Adolphe noted that he hoped the annual event would go smoothly. Hugo assured him that the joint training had always been successful. The room was thick with tension as Adolphe Morgue and Hugo Baskerville continued their conversation. Adolphe brought up a sensitive topic from the previous year, an incident involving serious injuries to children from both families. Hugo downplayed the situation, dismissing it as nothing more than minor injuries, and suggested that the Morgue's children had been overly dramatic. Adolphe, clearly displeased with this response, defended the Morgue family's honor. He reminded Hugo of their shared history, noting that the Baskervilles and Morgues had once been allies, united by their complementary skills, swordsmanship and magic. This alliance had led to regular joint training sessions for their children, a tradition that had continued even as relations between the patriarchs soured over a discovered ruby mine. The Emperor's command to maintain the joint training despite the growing discord was a point of contention, and Adolphe had come to ensure that the upcoming event went off without a hitch. His interest was not only in preserving the tradition but also in keeping the peace. Adolphe brought up the topic of Vikir, referring to him as a rare genius, a supernova that graced the Baskerville family once in a century. This was meant as a compliment, and Hugo's pride was evident. However, he downplayed its significance, surprising Adolf. The morgue representative had expected a more enthusiastic acknowledgement from Hugo, given the importance of such an exceptional talent. Default text conversation took an unexpected turn when Adolf mentioned that the morgues also had a prodigious talent. He called for his niece, Camus, to join them. Camus entered the room, a girl with striking red hair. Adolf introduced her as Respini's daughter and asked her to greet the patriarch. Instead of a courteous greeting, Camus launched into a bold accusation. She directly challenged Hugo, accusing him of being the thief who had stolen the morgue's ruby mine. The accusation sent a shockwave through the room, and Hugo's face darkened with anger. He shot an accusing glance at Adolf, questioning the validity of Camus's claim. Camus quickly clarified that her reference to the annoying chin beard was a term she used to describe the thief and not a personal insult. The tension in the room escalated as Adolf Morgue denied having said anything about the stolen ruby mine. Camus, however, was adamant, stating that Adolf had made the comment an hour and 42 minutes ago, just before they disembarked from the carriage. Hugo, struggling to keep his composure, asked for clarification. Adolf attempted to defuse the situation, suggesting it was a misunderstanding, but Hugo cut him off, insisting there was no need to explain the Morgue clan's issues with children's education. Camus continued to press for the return of her family's rubies, expressing frustration over her inability to conduct her research without them. Despite Adolf's attempts to calm her, Camus remained unrelenting. Hugo, now visibly irritated, remarked that it seemed the Morgues had failed to teach their children proper manners. This comment led to a tense exchange between Hugo and Adolf, with the latter questioning if Hugo intended to threaten an 8-year-old girl. In the midst of the argument, Vikir entered the room, announced by the head butler. Adolf's curiosity piqued, wondering if Vikir might be the Baskerville supernova. His thoughts were interrupted when he realized that Camus, who had been sitting beside him, had disappeared. Camus approached Vikir with an aggressive demeanor, demanding to know what he had just said. Adolf called out to her, trying to stop her from escalating the situation. Vikir, remaining calm, recognized Camus as the Morgue clan's iron-blooded empress, a prodigious mage with a reputation for defeating countless monsters and barbarians. Despite her formidable reputation, Vikir noted that she was still just a child. Camus confronted Vikir, questioning why he had any claim to the ruby mine. Vikir responded coolly, suggesting that Camus was merely throwing a tantrum. In a surprising move, Camus began casting a spell. Instead of attacking, she created an intricate ice sculpture, a demonstration of her magical prowess meant to illustrate her point. Vikir was taken aback by the choice of spell, having expected a more direct confrontation. Camus, with an air of authority, used her intricate ice sculpture to explain the situation regarding the disputed ruby mine. She clarified that the mine was situated on the border between Morgue and Baskerville territories, known as the Joint Security Area. While the entrance to the mine was on Morgue territory, the ruby vein ran beneath Baskerville land, complicating any claim. The Morgues had offered to pay rent for the territory, but the Baskervilles had rejected the proposal. Camus insisted that the rubies rightfully belonged to the Morgue clan and expressed frustration over the Baskervilles' interference with their mining activities. Adolf, pleased with this detailed explanation, seemed to support Camus's claim. Hugo, however, was visibly irritated by the ongoing discussion. Vikir chimed in, stating that while rubies were valuable for magical purposes, the Baskervilles had no immediate need for them. He explained that the Baskervilles were more interested in controlling their land and were not inclined to rent it out for a nominal fee. Vikir warned Camus not to venture into their territory, as it would only result in loss for the Morgues. Camus, dissatisfied with Vikir's response, took a bold step. She claimed possession of the ruby vein and placed her arm over the sculpture representing the Baskerville territory. She challenged Vikir, asking whose arm it was. Vikir, with a sly smile, claimed ownership, playfully asserting that since it was in his land, the arm was his. Camus, blushing and stammering, was taken aback by Vikir's audacious claim. With a mischievous grin, Vikir pulled out a knife, startling everyone in the room. His sinister grin and the knife's appearance sent shivers through the assembly. He declared, "I'm saying your arm's mine." Camus, terrified, questioned Vikir's intentions, while Hugo, sweating profusely, struggled to manage the escalating tension. As Vikir advanced with the knife towards Camus's hand, she screamed and cried out for her uncle. Adolf, enraged and protective, intervened, demanding Vikir to back away. Camus seized the opportunity to flee and ran to her uncle's side. Adolf, fuming, demanded an explanation from Hugo, accusing Vikir of recklessness. Hugo, realizing the gravity of the situation, admitted that Vikir had gone too far with his prank. Vikir revealed that the knife was a harmless toy, commonly used in the Baskerville family from a young age. Despite Vikir's apology and explanation, Adolf remained furious and criticized the practice of giving such dangerous toys to children. Hugo suggested refocusing on the main issue, the Ruby Mine dispute, and moving on to the upcoming friendly duels. Reluctantly, Adolf agreed, though still visibly upset. Camus, still shaken, warned Vikir that she would not forget his actions. Vikir, unfazed, responded with a faint smile, indicating his indifference. The day of the friendly duels arrived, with children between the ages of 8 and 15 gathered to showcase their skills. The event served as a platform for young talents from both the Baskerville and Moore clans to demonstrate their abilities in a series of friendly matches. The friendly duels were in full swing, with younger children engaging in theoretical battles and showcasing their mana sensitivity. However, the real excitement was centered on the highly anticipated clash between the two prodigies, Camus and Vikir Van Baskerville. This match was set to highlight the pinnacle of skill and talent from the Morag and Baskerville clans. Camus, with unwavering determination, faced Vikir with a fierce resolve. She made it clear that she wouldn't hold back and immediately began casting her spell. The audience watched in awe as Camus unleashed a series of 4 simultaneous spells. Spectators were astounded, with one exclaiming, "Is she really casting quadra spells at just 8 years old?" The impressive display of magical prowess was a testament to Camus's reputation as the Morg clan's genius mage. Despite the impressive display, Vikir dodged the barrage of spells effortlessly, his agility and reflexes on full display. With a hint of disdain, he criticized Camus's approach, suggesting that instead of dazzling with flashy spells, she should focus on mastering a single one. Camus, undeterred, sneered at Vikir and dismissed his comments, labeling him an idiot who lacked an understanding of magic. Undeterred, Camus conjured a sand wall spell to create a barrier between them. However, Vikir swiftly broke through the wall with a powerful kick, leaving Camus momentarily stunned. He commented on her harsh words with a bemused grin, showcasing his confidence and skill. Camus, taken aback by Vikir's strength, wondered aloud if he had gained his power from some mythical source like the river Styx. As she pondered, Vikir launched an attack that she realized was unavoidable. Preparing for impact, Camus closed her eyes, only to be surprised when she found herself unharmed. When she opened her eyes, she saw Vikir flicking her forehead with a casual yet forceful motion. The flick sent her flying backward, and the audience, including Adolf, watched in amazement at how such a simple action could carry so much force. Camus, wincing from the unexpected pain, demanded to know why Vikir had flicked her instead of delivering a more conventional attack. She accused him of going easy on her, her competitive spirit flaring up. Vikir, with a faint smile, seemed unfazed by her reaction. Prodigious display of skill and strategy. Camus, her frustration mounting, decided to take a more defensive approach. She cast a new spell, creating 2 sand walls and declaring confidently that Vikir would be unable to break through. Unimpressed by this move, Vikir prepared to humor her. With a single punch, he pierced through both walls, creating a gaping hole. Camus, astonished by the ease with which Vikir breached her defenses, was hit with another flick on her forehead, causing her to fall and growl in pain. Despite the pain, Camus's determination didn't wane. She continued her attacks with growing frustration, while Vikir deftly evaded them. Observing the other duels in the arena, Vikir saw a swordmaster cutting through a mage's spells with remarkable skill. He thought they might be useful in executing his plan. Camus, increasingly agitated, demanded that Vikir stop evading and face her head-on. Seizing a strategic moment, Vikir warned her to prepare a defensive spell. Confused at first, Camus soon realized the mage behind Vikir was about to cast a powerful spell. Adolf, recognizing Vikir's plan, shouted in alarm. A powerful blast erupted, engulfing the arena in chaos. The audience gasped and shouted as flames roared through the space. Camus, using her defensive spell, managed to shield herself from the worst of the blast, but her clothes were singed, leaving her in a state of embarrassment. Tears welled up in her eyes as she braced herself for the inevitable ridicule. In the midst of the smoke and confusion, Vikir appeared before Camus, offering her his jacket to cover herself. Camus was taken aback by his unexpected gesture of kindness, struggling to understand why he would help her despite their earlier conflict. She weakly protested, concerned that accepting his jacket would leave him exposed. Vikir, unfazed, insisted she take the jacket. As Camus noticed a scratch on Vikir's arm, she pointed it out. Vikir, surprised, realized the injury must have come from the swordmaster's blade, which likely carried residual aura from the river Styx. As the dust settled, Camus and Vikir were revealed to the audience. Adolf was visibly relieved to see that Camus was unharmed, while the audience noted that Vikir was the one injured. The sight of Vikir's shirtless form, displaying his fit physique, impressed the onlookers, showcasing the result of his rigorous training. Camus, blushing with a mixture of embarrassment and admiration, felt a confusing attraction toward Vikir. Despite their earlier enmity, she couldn't help but appreciate his unexpected act of kindness. After the intense duel between Vikir and Camus, Hugo and Vikir walked down a dimly lit hallway, reflecting on the day's events. Hugo broke the silence by asking Vikir about his match with the lady of the Moor clan. Vikir replied that the battle had been interesting and that he had gained insights into the event's true purpose. Hugo, however, questioned why Vikir hadn't delivered a decisive blow, noting that a battle with a mage was different from one between swordsmen. Vikir hesitated before admitting he wasn't sure how to handle a lady in combat. Hugo cautioned him about the dangers of letting his guard down, advising him to learn from his wound. Vikir was taken aback by Hugo's concern, recalling him as a cold and strict figure in his youth, rumored to have become that way due to personal losses. This unexpected display of concern made Vikir reassess Hugo's character. Hugo shifted the conversation to the topic of the ruby mines, asking for Vikir's thoughts. Vikir suggested relinquishing control of the mines, explaining that the Baskerville clan's primary goal was territorial expansion. He reasoned that the monsters and barbarians around the mines would become problematic during expansion and proposed that utilizing the Mord clan could minimize losses. Hugo agreed with Vikir's assessment and outlined his plan. He proposed that once the Mord clan controlled the ruby mines, they would assign a large workforce to the area. This would push the monsters and barbarians into the mine region and simultaneously soak the rubies in the blood of their enemies, deterring the Mord clan from further encroachment. Hugo praised Vikir's suggestion, noting it aligned closely with his own thoughts. Vikir found this fitting, as he had executed a similar strategy in his past life under Hugo's orders. Vikir recommended keeping a close watch on the Mord's movements, but Hugo felt it was unnecessary as he had already increased the number of scouts. Their conversation was interrupted by Adolf's voice calling out to Hugo. Hugo and Vikir turned to see Adolf approaching. Adolf expressed a desire to discuss the ruby mines before leaving. They adjourned to a nearby room, where Hugo asked Adolf what he wanted to address. Adolf proposed a peaceful resolution to the issues concerning the ruby mines, suggesting that fees for its use were just one of many possibilities. As Hugo and Adolf continued their discussion, Camus, still flushed from the earlier duel, observed Vikir with an intrigued expression. The mood in the room was tense as Hugo brought up the topic of a potential engagement between their families. Hugo, considering the gravity of such a union, asked Adolf which child he had in mind for the engagement. Adolf confidently suggested a match between his niece, Camus, and Vikir, the eldest son of the Baskerville clan. He lauded Camus for her exceptional qualities, her beauty, knowledge, and skill. Adolf believed Camus would be a perfect match for Vikir, who was often referred to as the small son of the Baskerville clan. Hugo, however, voiced concerns about the significant age difference between the two. He noted that his eldest son was 25 years old while Kimu was only 8, raising questions about the practicality of such a union. Adolf dismissed this concern, brushing off the 17-year gap as a minor issue in the grand scheme. Camus, visibly embarrassed yet determined, interjected with a firm stance. She declared that she would not marry anyone weaker than her mother and was adamant about not accepting a partner with a significant age difference. Her resolute attitude surprised both Hugo and Adolf. Adolf attempted to convince her otherwise, arguing that her insistence on marrying someone stronger than her mother could leave her single for life. Hugo, too, admonished her, reminding her that engagements weren't a buffet of choices. Despite their attempts to persuade her, Camus remained resolute. She was not willing to compromise her standards, no matter the consequences. As the discussion continued, Camus's gaze shifted to Vikir, catching Adolf's attention. To his shock, Camus was clearly considering Vikir in a different light. Adolf, taken aback by her interest, neatly cursed Vikir for complicating matters. He whispered urgently to Camus, advising her not to entertain the idea of Vikir. Adolf's belief was that Vikir, being from the Van family rather than the prestigious Le descent, would always be a minor player in the broader arena of power and influence. As tensions reached a boiling point in the negotiation room, Hugo's intervention shifted the focus to the real test of Vikir's abilities. The discussion of the engagement took a dramatic turn when Adolf challenged Vikir to a duel, aiming to test the young Baskerville's true strength and wordiness. Hugo, struggling to stifle his amusement, watched as Adolf's anger boiled over into a public confrontation. Adolf's proposal for a deeper conversation quickly revealed itself to be a duel, much to the surprise of everyone, including Camus, who was both anxious and intrigued. Adolf, with a stern expression, declared that he would be testing Vikir's abilities to determine if he was worthy of any future consideration. Adolf's demeanor was formidable as he took his position in the arena. Vikir, who had anticipated the challenge, mentally prepared himself for the confrontation. He realized that showing all his abilities might be overwhelming, even for someone of Adolf's caliber, but he was ready to demonstrate his strength. The duel commenced with a tense silence. Vikir and Adolf faced off in the center of the arena, with Hugo and Camus observing from the sidelines. Of magic, created a pot using fire, earth, and water magic. His control over the elements was precise and impressive, culminating in a challenge. Vikir had to make a single drop of water fall from the pot perched on Adolf's head to claim victory. Camus, observing intently, explained that this challenge showcased Adolf's exceptional magical control. As Vikir analyzed the situation, he weighed his chances. He estimated a 50% success rate for an assassination attempt but only a 10% chance in a direct confrontation. Opting for a strategic approach, Vikir decided to test his luck and skill against Adolf's formidable magic. Without hesitation, Vikir charged at Adolf with his sword, moving directly toward him. Camus, alarmed by the straightforward attack, shouted at Vikir to avoid a direct approach. Adolf, prepared for the assault, cast a barrier spell that easily blocked Vikir's strike. With a smirk, Adolf questioned Camus about her support for Vikir and dismissed his attack as futile. Adolf, confident in his shield magic's effectiveness against swordsmen, took the offensive. He cast powerful spells toward Vikir, who skillfully dodged each one. Camus, frustrated by the perceived unfairness of Adolf's high-level magic, voiced her complaints. Adolf, taken aback by her support for Vikir, angrily labeled him a bastard and vowed not to forgive him. As the duel continued, Vikir remained determined. He used his knowledge and skills to adapt to Adolf's magic, focusing on breaking through the barrier. Adolf, certain of his superiority, taunted Vikir about his sword's inability to pierce the shield. Despite the taunts, Vikir's persistent attacks began to create cracks in Adolf's shield. In a surprising twist, Vikir's sword broke into pieces, but not before managing to pierce the pot. Water began to pour over Adolf, drenching him completely. Vikir, with a satisfied smile, commented that the pot seemed full. Camus, witnessing the unexpected turn of events, was stunned. She watched in awe as Vikir triumphed over her powerful uncle, her admiration for him growing. The realization that Vikir had won the duel sparked thoughts of their potential engagement, leaving her with mixed emotions. Hugo, observing from the sidelines, acknowledged Vikir's exceptional performance. He recognized that Vikir's success was no mere coincidence but a testament to his remarkable talent and strength. Hugo began to reconsider his initial assessment of Vikir's potential, intrigued by the young Baskerville's capabilities.
Against all odds, Vikir Van Baskerville has triumphed over the formidable Adolf Morg in a battle of wit, skill, and sheer willpower. The unexpected victory has shifted the balance, leaving us all wondering what lies ahead for these two powerful clans.
Stay tuned for the next thrilling chapter, where alliances will be tested, secrets will be revealed, and the journey toward greatness continues.
Don't miss out on the excitement. If you enjoyed this epic showdown, hit the like button, leave a comment with your thoughts on the duel, and subscribe to our channel for more breathtaking battles and captivating stories. Ring the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.
Go away, please. Thank you for watching. Until next time, may your courage be as strong as your sword, and your wisdom as sharp as your wit. Farewell, brave souls.